Blog Talk Radio.
Lost myths of forgotten kingdoms, cultures predating the scope of modern man, vacant megalithic structures, lost stand tall everywhere, abandoned, overshadowing, mushroom-mangled courtyards, once cut to precise pattern, perfect for celestial scrying. The Nazca lines hint of past significance. Crop circles mark code. Fallen angels, ancient aliens, stargazers wise in aligning primordial cities to heavenly influence. Grand astronomical temples inscribing their deeds as they molded urban center to the rhythms of a natural earth. Who were they to know so much, so young in history? Still deciphering the legacy of their tales, we laugh the fable off, ascribing it to superstition. Here the gods roamed, divining human form, gathering minerals to adorn hybrid lives, intruding this plane and thought. Stately statues celebrate their tale, wide etched in murals, carved to exact precision, defying explanation and rational thought. What if we're going backwards, having lost our connection to source, and it's worse than it's ever been before? Strategically placed equatorial city harbors collective memory of suppressed lives, standing for a time when mythic existence, created as real, courses aligned, constructed to sun and stars, moon-backed, otherworldly knowledge silhouetted in mystery. Hidden, still pregnant in earthen mounds, cities vast in secret, forgotten myth and lore, remaining dormant, vine-covered, releasing only minor clues, broken glyph temples, jutting to wide sky, still observant of realms and celestial uncertainties. Satellites now spot their lost location. Soon, the secrets of blood-stained altars raised to sun, reaching rainforest rooftops, hosting dedication and worship of the feathered serpent, the Nakash hidden among birds of paradise, flocked in every color. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is FallenAngels.tv. It's October 19th, 2013, and we're quickly moving into what feels like winter here in Georgia. It's been abruptly cool, and the temperature is declining, and certainly everybody is noticing the loss of sunshine and the elongation of night, shortening of days. And so we're moving quickly to what will be the winter solstice. And then, even though the temperature will still be in decline and winter will be in its full cascade, we will be at least gathering 4 minutes more of sunshine every day. And so once we reach December 21st, even though the temperatures will be declining over the course of the next 3 months, we will at least be gathering 4 minutes more of sunshine every day, and we'll be moving back towards what will be the height and the culmination of sunshine and the longest day of the year, which will occur somewhere around June 20th, 21st. But I want to just thank everybody for joining me, and appreciate you taking the time to come and support our show and listen to the different things that we've been speaking about. For those that don't know, I have begun to do my show on Revolution Radio. I've been invited to host my own show called Momentary Zen every Tuesday night between 8 and 10 p.m. Eastern, which is a whole lot easier. And I know that the show will be more accessible to many of you that are, especially East Coast like myself, and found, and also, if you have a 9-to-5 job, you certainly can't stay up from midnight to 2 a.m. just to catch the live show. But we are coming at a more decent time, prime time hours, which are a lot more accessible to many of you as my friends and supporters and listeners, and so I appreciate that, and it will be also greater and more beneficial for the show as well to have you come and to share your most introspective questions and having fellowship and sharing dialogue in the chat room, which goes live once the show started. And for those that are looking to join us, you can go to freedomslips.com, and we will be in Studio B every Tuesday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And I will be hosting and doing interviews on that show and bringing different guests at a later date. I'm going to take the first few initially just to catch up a lot of the new listeners, which we have a great many there on Revolution Radio that will be joining us that have not heard of me and are not familiar with my work nor the things that I've written. And I also think that it's interesting for you, many of you that have been listening to the show for a number of years now that are members at the fallenangels.tv website, to hear a little bit of the background of my life and how I came to be where I am, and to give you greater detail on my personal journey and adventures in this world, because I certainly, even though I have done shows like that, that's not something that I have done a lot of. I have done more shows in covering different wisdom texts, mythologies, histories of the world and creation, and have given great detail on a lot of all that, even more so than on my personal life and journey. And so it will help to tie all of it together for you and give you a little bit of insight into who I am and how I came to be where I am. So I think that's going to be awesome. I appreciate you, Professor Truth. I did get a new mic, and so I am trying to get the sound quality better, and my brother, Professor Truth, has given me some tips on how to get all that, because I know that some of the shows I sound either a little bit muffled or kind of like I'm underwater, and so it makes it difficult, especially for those that don't have very expensive computers, that don't have great sound systems yourselves. It makes it difficult for you to be able to listen to me and to hear in clarity the things that I've been saying. And so I am attempting in what ways I can to bring to you a better and higher quality show. But I think that a lot of the trouble lies on the end as far as blogtalkradio.com, because when I do my shows on Revolution Radio or I'm a guest on other shows, the sound quality is more superior than what we are coming off on as far as this particular show. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the help and for all the suggestions, and for all of you having bared with me even up until this time. So, but anyways, today I'm going to be covering the prior times and going into some of the history of Atlantis and bringing some information as far as, what led us to where we are as far as modern humanity, but also going back into what is termed by the Egyptians as Zep-Tepe, or the first time, what the Sumerians call the prior time. And I'm going to be speaking about the time, the period between what was the separation of light and darkness and the fall, the banishment, the seraphim angels and Lucifer, who became known as Satan, the adversary, the accuser of the brethren. And so we'll talk about that, and leading up until the sixth day with the modern creation of Adam and Eve and their seduction, beguilement, loss of immortality, and replacement, banishment from paradise to be replaced and regathered here on this planet, which is a fallen world, which was already even before their creation under the authority of the powers, the principalities, the archons, the rulers of darkness of this world, the powers of the air, Lucifer, the New World Order, and all those that worshipped the Nakash, the ancient Nakash, or the feathered serpent, the guardian of the knowledge, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which if you study into the oral traditions, the histories of the world, and the different ancient religious belief systems and mythologies all around the world, you find a connecting link to the worship of the serpent. And even though it has been labeled as such, it's only recently that we are coming to know that serpent as the ancient Nakash, labeled as the dragon, that ancient dragon in Revelation 12. I believe it's Revelation 12. But anyways, and so, and with my research that I've done on the Nakash and the seraphim angels, and how seraph also means snake, and that the seraphim angels were also known as the dragons of old, that in my work, Sons of God, Who We Are and Why We're Here, in the 14th chapter of that book, I cover the flying fiery serpent. And I tie all of these things together in that particular chapter, and I'm going to be going over some of the information that I relay in that chapter to help you to understand how ancient mythology and the oral traditions of individuals like the Sangoma Credo Mutwa, who was a South African medicine man, and how even the Chinese tradition, belief systems on the dragons of old, and how, even the medieval dragons tie into the worship of the feathered serpent. And so we'll go into some of that today. And I know that we have a lot of new listeners, and so I appreciate all of you that are new, that are just having heard of my work or have begun to study some of these esoteric things. This will be sort of review for a lot of those that have listened to me for a number of years, but it's worthy information, and it will help assist the new listeners to come to discernment on how all these things tie together. And so And I do welcome everybody and appreciate all of you taking the time to join us on this day, this Sabbath day. And I want to start with something that I haven't covered very often. It's a book by Hesiod. It's called Works and Days. And I'm only going to cover one aspect of it, just a few paragraphs. But in this particular wisdom text, Hesiod is relating to Perseus the mention of what were the different types and creations of the gods and men. And when I say gods, I'm speaking about the fallen angels, the archons, the Nephilim, as described in Genesis chapter 6, those that were part and parcel to the insurrection, the rebellion of Lucifer on the second day, and there having been cast out on the second day. Whether that rebellion goes back to the first day, I know that the sons of God, the council of the mighty, that they were created in the first day. But with the separation of light and darkness, it mentions this in the book of the Secrets of Enoch, that Lucifer and the seraphim angels were cast out on the second day, and that the rebellion occurred on that particular day. And so this particular part called Works and Days, I'm only going to read a few chapters because it will give you great insight into what is the prior time. Because most people, not a lot of, even those that have been studying these things for a long time, have been brought to the discernment and understand with clarity that the fallen angels were here before we were, and that they were on the planet, even with the pre-Adamic humans, the Cro-Magnon, Neanderthals, and the different kind of hybrid creatures, that they were partially responsible for manipulating and experimenting with and bringing into being. And so I'll go into that too, because I'm going to read from some of the ancient sources that's cited by Mantheo and Berosus, who Berosus was a Chaldean historian, and he was asked by Alexander the Great to write about the history of the gods, or the archons, the fallen angels, the Nephilim, before we arrived upon the scene. And when I say we, specifically speaking about those that are the ancestors of Adam and Eve, that are of either the Canaanite line, the seed of the serpent, or of the Sethite line, the seed of the woman. And this history goes back to just about 6,000 years. And the time of Atlantis, and leading up to the arrival of the fallen angels, the archons, as cited in the Sumerian lore, goes back to 430 plus thousand years, as far as what it says when they first arrived and established Eridu, which is the first colony. Called Eridu references home in the faraway. So it's basically the first colony for what were the Nephilim here on this particular planet. And what is also interesting about the different king lists cited by Berosus and Mantheo, and also by an Egyptian papyrus called the Turin Papyrus, is that it speaks about how these fallen angels, how they ruled and how they were ruling over the planet before the creation of humanity and before the arrival of humanity. And so if you understand that the fallen angels were here first, then all of that makes sense. And it also speaks about how the early rhymes of these fallen angels, of the archons, that beginning with Thoth, whom we know as Poseidon, and also as Enki, or Ea, which was his first name, his Sumerian name. He's also Samael, or who we know as Satan, the angel of death. He's also who we know as Oannes, or Dagon, and he's also referenced as the king of Atlantis by the works of Plato, and we'll talk about that as well. But I'm just setting the foundation for you so you'll be able to understand this in greater detail as I begin to read from the various mythologies and the different things that cover and speak about the prior times. So from Hesiod's Works and Days, it says this. First of all, the deathless gods who dwell on Olympus made a golden race of mortal men who lived in the time of Kronos, when he was reigning in heaven. And they lived like gods without sorrow of heart, remote and free from toil and grief. Miserable age rested not on them, but with legs and arms never failing, they made merry with feasting beyond the reach of all evils. When they died, it was as though they were overcome with sleep, and they had all good things. For the fruitful earth, unforced, bare them fruit abundantly, and without stint. They dwelt in ease and peace upon the lands with many good things, rich and flocks, and loved by the blessed God. But after the earth had covered this generation, they are called pure spirits dwelling on the earth, and are kindly, delivering from harm, and guardians of mortal men. For they roam everywhere over the earth, clothed in mist, and keep watch on judgments and cruel deeds. Givers of wealth, for this royal right also they received. Then they who dwell on Olympus made a second generation, which was of silver and less noble by far. It was like the golden race, neither in body nor in spirit. A child was brought up at his good mother's side 100 years, an utter simpleton playing childlessly in his own home. But when they were full grown and were come to the full measure of their prime, they lived only a little time in sorrow because of their foolishness. For they could not keep from sinning and from wronging one another, nor would they serve the immortals, nor sacrifice on the holy altars of the blessed ones, as it is right for men to do wherever they dwell. And then Zeus, the son of Kronos, was angry and put them away, because they would not give honor to the blessed gods who live on Olympus. But when earth had covered this generation also, they are called blessed spirits of the underworld by men. And though they are of second order, yet honor attends them also. Zeus, the father, made a third generation of mortal men, a brazen race sprung from ash trees, and it was in no way equal to the silver age, but was terrible and strong. They loved the lamentable works of Ares and deeds of violence. They ate no bread, but were hard of heart like adamant. Fearful men, great was their strength, and unconquerable the arms which grew from their shoulders on their strong limbs. Their armor was of bronze, and their houses of bronze, and of bronze were their implements. There was no black iron. These were destroyed by their own hands, and passed to the dank house of chill Hades, and left no name. Terrible though they were, black death seized them, and they left the bright light of the sun. But when the earth had covered this generation also, Zeus, the son of Cronos, made yet another, the fourth upon the fruitful earth, which was nobler and more righteous, a godlike race of hero men who are called demigods, the race before our own. Throughout the boundless earth, grim war and dread battle destroyed a part of them, some in the land of Cadmus at seven-gated Thebes, when they fought for the flocks of Oedipus, and some when it had brought them in ships over the great sea gulf to Troy for rich-haired Helen's sake. There death's end enshrouded a part of them, but to the other Father Zeus, the son of Cronos, gave a living and abode apart from men, and made them dwell at the ends of earth. And they live untouched by sorrow in the islands of the blessed along the shore of the deep swirling ocean. Happy heroes, for whom the grain-giving earth bears honey sweet fruit, flourishing thrice a year. Far from the deathless gods, Cronos rules over them, for the Father of men and gods released him from his bonds, and these last equally have honor and glory. And again, far-seeing Zeus made yet another generation, the fifth, of men who are upon the bounteous earth. Therefore, would that I were not among the men of the fifth generation, but either had died before or been born afterwards. For now truly is a race of iron, and men never rest from labor and sorrow by day, and from perishing by night. And the gods shall lay sore trouble upon them. But notwithstanding, even these shall have some good mingled with their evil. And Zeus will destroy this race of mortal men also, when they come to have gray hair on the temples at their birth. The father will not agree with his children, nor the children with their father, nor guest with his host, nor comrade with comrade, nor will brother be dear to brother, as aforetime. Men will dishonor their parents as they grow quickly old, and will carp at them, chiding them with bitter words. Parents, the cost, their nurture, for might shall be their right, and one man will sack another city. There will be no favor for them, for the man who keeps his oath, or for the just, or for the good, but rather men will praise the evildoer and his violent dealing. Strength will be right, and reverence will cease to be. And the wicked will hurt the worthy man, speaking false words against him, and will swear an oath upon them. Envy, foul mouth, delighting in evil, with scowling face, will go along with wretched men, one and all. And the Adios and Nemesis, with their sweet forms wrapped in white robes, will go from the wide path earth, and forsake mankind to join the company of the deathless gods. And the bitter sorrows will be left for mortal men, and there will be no help against evil. you see how it makes mention of 5 generations, 5 different types of beings, going back to when the deathless gods, who I term as basically the Annunaki, the archons, the fallen angels, when they roamed and were here upon the earth, and it gives it hints at how they were able to take on form, and how they were then able to clothe themselves into flesh and into the bodies of men, which is also spoken about and cited in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which I'm going to read some of that as well. In just a few of the different parts of the different tablets which are connected to, but you will see in those particular tablets it gives the same kind of how we are, basically degrading from what was cited and called the Golden Age. And in the Sumerian text, when you read about the arrival of the Anunnaki, the archons upon this particular planet, during that initial time, there was great bounty. It was as if they had arrived in paradise, on Eden, where nothing had been built up or destroyed. Nature was, working in abundance and harmony, and everything was basically took care of itself. All the creatures had plenty of food. There wasn't overconsumption or over-destruction. Nothing had yet been poisoned or desecrated or destroyed, the way that a lot of the planet and different parts of the earth today have. And then it speaks about the progression and the slow decimation of nature, and how life became increasingly difficult, and how even the first mortals, that even though they were seemingly immortal, because a lot of the Sumerian tales speak about how when the Anunnaki first arrived, they had seemingly immortal lifespans, and it seems to the pre-Adamic peoples of the earth that they were as gods. And even a lot of people that study and look into the full summation of mythology, they believe that the Sumerians, that they were gods and that they were not able to be killed, but they were not pure in spirit. They were then, at that time, housed in bodies and housed in flesh. And they certainly had to live like we do today. And what I mean by that is that we are clothed in flesh. We eat, sleep, and dream. We defecate. We have to expend ourselves of, the different things that we put into our systems, waters, and also we have to explicate the different food items that we consume, and it's by chewing and eating and absorbing through digestion the energy that our bodies are nourished in that capacity, in that way, that the Sumerians, even in the Sumerian mythology, even though it seems like they were immortals and godlike, they could even be killed, and that there were very rare instances and cases of death occurring to the Anunnaki, the archons, back in what was the Golden Age, the prior times, Zep-Tepe, when they first arrived here. And it wasn't until after they were here for a long period that they began to become accustomed and assimilated to the quick and rapid orbit and rotation of the Earth around the sun, and that caused them also to demise in a quicker capacity. And it speaks about this also in the Sumerian tales as well. Another thing, if you look at and you recognize with the tales of the first patriarchs from Adam to Noah, that even humanity initially created by the Most High, because even though, Hesiod, Works and Days, gives all credentials to Zeus and the Olympian gods, we certainly know that the Most High, Yahushua and Yahuwah, or who many people know as Yahweh and Jesus Christ, that they were the ones that created humanity and that we were made in their image. And I was speaking about modern humanity. And certainly even that the sons of God, in their immortal nature, and Adam and Eve included before they fell and were clothed in flesh, that they were also made in the image of the Father and the Son. And so, I'm going to touch upon a couple of passages from what was the Emerald Tablets, which talk about when they were, also when the Anunnaki first arrived here. And if you're not familiar with these particular tablets and with the works that are found within them and the story that they relate, it gives the story is written from the first person perspective of Thoth, who was an Atlantean priest king that lived during the time of Atlantis, and that he speaks about what occurred during that time and previously, and how it led to the destruction of Atlantis, which was a judgment by the Father against the fallen angels, which has happened many times throughout history, and that even the planet Tiamat, which was the earth before it was destroyed, even Tiamat was destroyed as judgment against the fallen angels, and that Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 23, where it speaks about a time when there was no man, but yet all the birds fled and the cities of the wilderness were destroyed, that it speaks about one of those judgments against the fallen angels, and that Atlantis and the destruction of Atlantis was also judgment against the fallen angels. The flood of Noah's day was, unlike a lot of people think, was not a judgment that was levied upon the world because of the wickedness of humanity, but it was because another group of angels, the Watchers specifically, a group of 200 angels, which was a second incursion. These angels of the Most High, they challenged Christ to put them into the flesh. And they said that they would come down here and uphold his commandments and teach humanity about the ways of righteousness. but instead they arrived here and lusted after the daughters of man. And because they were put into human bodies, even though they were still spiritual beings, when they mated with the daughters of humanity, they created a race of hybrid beings, which also leads me to a question that I had promised to answer my friend Kathy Tiso, I believe is her name. And so she's been waiting patiently for me to answer this question, and it had specifically to do with Cain and whether Cain was a giant. We know that he was the first hybrid and that he was born from the fornication of Samael, as cited in the Targum, that it cites Samael, or whom we know as Satan, the Nakash, as being the father of Cain. And she asked me whether Cain was a giant and what did he look like. And so I'm going to cite something from chapter 2 of Jasher, and then I'm going to give a little bit more detail into this particular question, because other people have also asked me about this question, and I told them that I would answer it today. And so, from Jasher, the book of Jasher, chapter 2, it says this: "And Lamech was old and advanced in years, and his eyes were dim, that he could not see. And Tubal-Cain, his son, was leading him, and it was one day that Lamech went into the field, and Tubal-Cain, his son, was with him. And whilst they were walking in the field, Cain, the son of Adam, advanced towards them. For Lamech was very old and could not see much, and Tubal-Cain, his son, was very young. And Tubal-Cain told his father to draw his bow, and with the arrows he smote Cain, who was yet far off, and he slew him, for he appeared to them to be an animal. And the arrows entered Cain's body, although he was distant from them, and he fell to the ground and died. And the Lord requited Cain's evil according to his wickedness, which he had done to his brother Abel, according to the word of the Lord which he had spoken. And it came to pass, when Cain had died, that Lamech and Tubal went to see the animal which they had slain. And they saw, and behold, Cain, their grandfather, was fallen dead upon the earth. And Lamech was very much grieved, having done this. And in clapping his hands together, he struck his son and caused his death. And the wives of Lamech heard what Lamech had done, and they sought to kill him. And the wives of Lamech hated him from that day, because he slew Cain and Tubal-Cain. And the wives of Lamech separated from him, and would not hearken to him in those days. And Lamech came to his wives, and he pressed them to listen to him about this matter. He said to his wives, Adad and Zillah, Hear my voice, O wives of Lamech, attend to my words, for now you have imagined and said that I slew a man with my wounds, and a child with my stripes, for their having done no violence. But surely know that I am old and gray-headed, and that my eyes are heavy through age, and I did not do this thing knowingly. And the wives of Lamech listened to him in this matter, and they returned to him with the advice of their father Adam, but they bore no children to him from that time, knowing that God's anger was increasing in those days against the sons of men, to destroy them with the waters of the flood for their evil doing. Okay, I want to bring up some detail on this. There are some, and I think it's in the book of Zohar or in the Talmud, one of those books, the rabbi is giving commentary, and they fill in the gaps as to why they thought Cain was an animal. First, a lot of people ask and believe that Cain, when he was marked, that he was put under the protection of the Father and the Son, and that this was a blessing. But in my opinion, from the research that I've done and things that I've come to study and come to know, it's my opinion that Cain was marked, and that when he was marked, he was cursed to be killed by his own progeny, and that the Lord gave him reprieve for a small amount of time. 7 generations, in fact. And he was cursed to be killed by his own progeny, and that in killing their grandfather or the patriarch or their line would also be cursed. And so the curse would be ongoing. And so that was not a blessing. Even though he was spared for a certain amount of time, it was not a blessing in any way. He was just given a certain period of reprieve. And so he wasn't put under the protection. And in another one of the things that the rabbis speak about is that Cain was given a horn, and that because he was a hybrid, he was different from what were, Adam and Eve, and also the lines of Seth, because Adam and Eve were both of fallen, even though they were fallen in flesh form, they were, when they mated together, they gave birth to natural children, not hybrid beings. And so Cain was different, and he was animal-like. How that was in detail, we don't know, but the rabbis cite that he was marked and that he had horns, either one horn, 2 horns, but that he had horns. And so, now, Kathy also asked me whether I thought Cain was a giant. It's my opinion that not only was Cain a giant, but that our elder patriarchs and matriarchs of the line of Adam and Seth, that they were of greater stature, and that they would be considered what we call and term giants today. And that not only were they of greater and larger stature, but that they also had longer lifespans, and that the first 10 generations after Adam, that they would be considered what we call giants today. And remember, it speaks about this in the book of Enoch, that the lifespan and that the statures of humanity would be reduced after Noah to 120 years, and that they would also be made smaller in size. And also that the sons of Anak, the giants born from the Nephilim, that their seeming immortal lifespans would be reduced to 500 years, and that they would also be reduced in stature. And so, I do believe that Cain was a giant, but that he was, as a hybrid, beastly and had an animal nature, and that he had horns. And so, and as far as any greater detail than that, I can't really give it to you, because I don't, from the scriptures and the books that I've read, I can't really speculate, because they also do not give any greater detail than what I have shared with you. All right. Now I'm going to go into, I wanted to read just a little bit from the Emerald Tablet, going back to what was spoken about by Thoth, who was an Atlantean priest king. And this will also give you insight into the prior times and what led up to and including the destruction of Atlantis. It says this: "Great were my people in the ancient days, great beyond the conceptions of the little people now around me, knowing the wisdom of old, seeking far within the heart." Now also, before I continue, remember in the Sumerian depiction how the Annunaki, the Nephilim, how they were of tremendous stature, and that even seated, there's these Sumerian depictions that even seated, they were taller than the pre-Adamic humans, or what was called the primitive worker, who they also mixed with and helped to bring to a certain degree of civilization, that they ruled over and created this slave race in an effort to, have them to do the menial tasks and the work that they did not want to do. And so in those depictions, and also another thing is that a lot of the Anunnaki, the ancient gods and goddesses of old, the pantheon of these fallen angels, that they were depicted as being sometimes part human, part hybrid, different animals, and also that they were also depicted as being serpent-like. In many of the murals, in many of the depictions, in many of the cuneiform texts, they are shown as being reptilian, Nakash-like, dragon-like beings with wings. And so just keep that in mind. All right, and so here he says, "Great were my people in the ancient days, great beyond the conception of the little people now around me," meaning that he was of larger stature and larger size. "Knowing the wisdom of old, seeking far within the heart of infinity, knowledge that belonged to the earth's youth. Wise were we with the wisdom of the children of light who dwelt among us. Strong were we with the power drawn from the eternal fire. And of all these, greatest among the children of men was my father, Thoth, keeper of the great temple, link between the children of light who dwelt within the temple and the races of men who inhabited the 10 islands, mouthpiece after the 3 of the dweller of Unal, speaking to the king with a voice that must be obeyed." Remember that Atlantis was an island empire, and that there were 10 islands. Even Plato speaks about this. "Grew I there from a child into manhood, being taught by my father the elder mysteries, until in time there grew within the fire of wisdom until it burst into a consuming flame. Not desired I but the attainment of wisdom, until on a great day the command came from the dweller of the temple that I be brought before him. Few there were among the children of men who had looked upon the mighty face and lived. For not as the sons of men are the children of light, when they are not incarnate in a physical body. Chosen was I from the sons of men, taught by the dwellers so that his purposes might be fulfilled, purposes yet unborn in the womb of time. Long ages I dwelt in the temple, learning every and yet ever more wisdom until I, too, approached the light emitted from the great fire. Taught me he the path to Amente, the underworld where the great king sits upon his throne of might. I want to make a comment here real quick, that even during the time of Atlantis, it speaks about these underground bases and how they were able to go deep into the darkness of the earth, and that there they met with some of their leaders, and that there was these libraries of knowledge down in the deep bowels of the earth. And so it speaks about these underground bases in what are the Emerald Tablets. And my friend Professor Truth, he shares information in his work, his videos, that because he's connected to and has worked with the different black ops and with different people that have worked on that side of the intelligence agencies. And they have given confirmation as to how in our development of these underground bases that we were building bases on top of these old ancient bases that were already in existence, and that we were just connecting, building right on top of them and connecting to structures that were already in existence. And for those that are interested in more of information along those lines, Professor Truth is in the chat room, so if you'd like to ask him to be on his listserv or ask for further detail of what I'm talking about, you can certainly do so. And I'm sure that he would be glad to share more information than what I'll be able to cover here today. Free was I of the halls of Amente, bound not by death, to the circle of life. Far to the stars I journeyed until space and time became as naught. Then, having drunk deep of the cup of wisdom, I looked into the hearts of men, and there found I greater mysteries and was glad. For only in the search for truth could my soul be stilled, and the flame within be quenched. Down through the ages I live, seeing those around me taste of the cup of death, and return again in the light of life. Gradually from the kingdom of Atlantis passed waves of consciousness that had been one with me, only to be replaced by spawn of a lower star. Now, it may seemingly, for those that don't know and that don't have greater detail on this, it would seem to imply that there is reincarnation, but you have to remember these are the fallen angels, and that they, like the vampires and like the, those that are part of the lycanthropy, they can host and possess form, that they are going to be judged, that they don't have part in salvation. And so they are, until the time that Christ returns again, they are able to cycle through form and to hold and to take over bodies of individuals that give themselves up for such possession. And through ritual, these individuals invite these particular beings to take over and to live and dwell within them. And so that's what it's meaning by that particular passage. In my next book, Skyfall, I give great detail on this and the difference between reincarnation and incarnation. In obedience to the law, the world of the master grew into flower, downward into the darkness, turned the thought of the Atlanteans, until at last in his wrath arose from Aguanti, the dweller, speaking the word, calling the power deep in earth's heart. The sons of Amente heard, and hearing directed the changing of the flower of fire that burns eternally, changing and shifting using the logos until that great fire changed its direction. Over the world then broke the great waters, drowning and sinking, changing earth's balance until only the temple of light was left standing on the great mountain of Undal, still rising out of the waters. Some there were who were living saved from the rush of the fountains. Called to me then the master, saying, gather ye together my people, take them by the arts ye have learned, far across the waters until ye reach the land of the hairy barbarians, dwelling in the caves of the desert. Follow there the plan that you know of. Gathered I then my people and entered the great ship of the master. Upward we rose into the morning. Dark beneath us lay the temple. Suddenly over it rose the waters, and vanished from earth until the time appointed was the great temple. Fled toward the sun of the morning, until beneath us lay the land of the children of Chem. Raging they came with cudgels and spears, lifted in anger, seeking to slay and utterly destroy the sons of Atlantis. Then raised I my staff and directed a ray of vibration, striking them still in their tracks as fragments of stone of the mountain. Then spoke I them in words calm and peaceful, telling them of the might of Atlantis, saying, we were children of the sun and its messengers. Cowed I them by my display of magic science, until at my feet they groveled when I released them. Long dwelt we in the land of Chem, long and yet long again, until obeying the commands of the Master, who while sleeping yet lives eternally, I sent from me the sons of Atlantis, sent them in many directions, that from the womb of time wisdom might rise again in her children. Long time dwelt I in the land of Chem, doing great works by the wisdom within me. Upward grew into the light of knowledge the children of Chem. Watered by the rains of my wisdom, blasted I then a path to Amente, that I might retain my powers, living from age to age a son of Atlantis, keeping the wisdom, preserving the records. Great grew the sons of Chem, conquering the people around them, growing slowly upwards in soul force. Now for a time I go from among them into the dark halls of Amente, deep into the halls of the earth, before the lords of the powers, face to face once again with the dweller. Raised I a high entrance, a doorway, a gateway leading down to Amente. Few there would be with courage to dare it. Few past the portals to dark Amente. Raised over the passage I, a mighty pyramid using the power that overcame earth's force. Deep and yet deeper placed I a force house of chamber. From it carved I a circular passage, reaching almost to the great summit. There in the apex set I the crystal sending the ray into the time-space, drawing the force from out of the ether, concentrating upon the gateway to Amente. Almost done with this particular passage. Built I the great pyramid patterned after the pyramid of the earth force, burning eternally so that it too might remain through the ages. In it I built my knowledge of magic science so that it might be here when again I return from Amente. While I sleep in the halls of Amente, my soul roaming free will incarnate, dwell among men in this form or another. And so that is from the Emerald Tablet number 1. Now, I'm going to read real quick something that is cited in the works of Plato. And I'm not going to be able to cover all the things that I want to cover because I've got a lot of various passages from different works, from ancient scriptures, which will help me to tie the full story together so that you can understand what it is that I'm talking about and what it is that I write about in my book, Sons of God, and also what I'm going to be covering in Skyfall. So really quick, I'm going to read a little bit from what Plato cites in Timaeus and Critias, which is specific to Atlantis, which will also give, further confirmation that the fallen angels were here and that Enki, Ea, or who we know as Oannes, Dagon, cited in the Old Testament, that Poseidon, who we know as the Egyptian Ptah, they're all the same character, all the same being. The tale, which was of great length, began as follows. I have before remarked in speaking of the allotments of the gods that they distributed the whole earth into portions differing in extent and made themselves temple and sacrifices. And Poseidon, one thing I want to clarify here too, just so you know, Enki or Ea, he's known as Poseidon. And Enlil, his brother, is who we know as Zeus. Just to give you clarity, because a lot of people think that Yahweh or Yahuwah is Enlil. But, Yahweh or Yahuwah is the Most High God, the Creator. And He and Christ are one. And a lot of people get this confused. They believe that Enlil is Yahweh, but it's not true. Enlil is Zeus, and his brother Enki, Ea, and all of the other Annunaki, or archons, or fallen angels, or Nephilim, they are the Greeks, the Romans, the pantheon of minor gods and goddesses. They're all fallen angels. So that'll help you to understand what I'm talking about here. Okay. And make themselves temple and sacrifices. I want to read that particular part again. I have before remarked in speaking of the allotments of the gods that they distributed the whole earth into portions differing in extent and made themselves temples and sacrifices. Now remember those that worship the fallen angels, that they demanded blood sacrifice and often human sacrifice. And Poseidon, receiving for his lot the island of Atlantis, begat children by a mortal woman, and settled them in a part of the island which I will proceed to describe. Now, in Plato's work, there's a great description of the island and how it was laid out and all those different things, but I'm gonna skip that part. In this mountain there dwelt one of the earthborn primeval men of that country, whose name was Evanor, and he had a wife named Leucippe, and they had an only daughter who was named Cleto. The maiden was growing up to womanhood when her father and mother died. Poseidon fell in love with her and had intercourse with her, and breaking the ground enclosed the hill in which she dwelt all around, making it alternate zones of sea and land, larger and smaller, encircling one another. They were 2 of land and 3 of water, which he turned as with a lath out of the center of the island, equidistant every way, so that no man to the island, for ships and voyages were not yet heard of. He himself, as he was a god, found no difficulty in making special arrangements for the center island, bringing 2 streams of water under the earth, which he caused to ascend as springs. One was of warm water and the other of cold, and making every variety of food to spring up abundantly in the earth. He also begat and brought up 5 pairs of male children, dividing the island of Atlantis into 10 portions. He gave to the firstborn, or the eldest pair, his mother's dwelling and the surrounding allotments, which was the largest and best, and made him king over the rest. The others he made princes and gave them rule over men and a large territory. And he named them all. The eldest, who was king, he named Atlas. And from him the whole island and the ocean received the name Atlantic. To his twin brother, who was born after him, and obtained as his lot of extremity of the island toward the pillar of Heracles, as far as the country which is still called the region of Gades, in that 10th part of the world. He gave the name which in the Hellenistic language is Eumelus, in the language of the country which is named after him, Gadareus. I'm not going to read all the names of the different children, but just know that, Poseidon did have these 10 children. That Atlas, who many know as having, the world on his shoulders, that he was the firstborn, and that he was the first king over Atlantis besides Enki, Ea, Oannes, Dagon, because they're all the same person, Poseidon, or Neptune. Now, one other passage from Plato on this part, because I know we're quickly running out of time. Then I'll make some commentary on this. Many great and wonderful deeds are recorded of your state in our histories, but one of them exceeds all of the rest in greatness and valor. For these histories tell of a mighty power which was aggressing wantonly against the whole of Europe and Asia, and to which your city put an end. This power came forth out of the Atlantic Ocean, for in those days the Atlantic was navigable, and there was an island situated in front of the straits which you call the columns of Heracles, the strait of Gibraltar, known as the Pillar of Hercules. The island was larger than Libya and Asia and put together, and was the way to other islands, and from the islands you might pass through the whole of the opposite continent which surrounded the true ocean. For this sea, which is within the straits of Heracles, is only a harbor, having narrow entrance, but the other is a real sea, and surrounding land may be most truly called a continent. Now, in the island of Atlantis, there was a great and wonderful empire, which had rule over the whole island and several others, as well as over parts of the continent. And besides these, they subjected the parts of Lydia within the columns of Heracles as far as Egypt, and of Europe as far as Tyrrhenia, which is known as Italy. The vast power that thus gathered into one endeavor to subdue at one blow our country and yours, and the whole of the land which was within the straits. And then Solon, your country, shone forth in the excellence of her virtue and strength among all mankind, for she was the first in courage and military skill, and was the leader of the Hellenes. And when the rest fell off from her, being compelled to stand alone after having undergone the very extremity of danger, she defeated and triumphed over the invaders, and preserved from slavery those who were not yet subjected, and freely liberated, and the others who dwelt within the limits of Heracles. But afterwards there occurred violent earthquake and flood, and in a single day and night of rain all your warlike men in a body sunk into the earth, and the island of Atlantis in like manner disappeared, and was sunk beneath the sea. And that is the reason why the sea in those parts is impassable and impenetrable, because there is such a quantity of shallow mud in the way, and this was caused by of the island. That's in Plato, Critias. Now, I know I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to read any more, but I wanted to just say that I'll do another second part to this, because I still have a lot of material that I want to bring forth to bring further confirmation as to what occurred into the prior times and how it led us to where we are, and how it was that the Most High and the Son, how they judged the fallen angels at every turn of the way, that even the flood of Noah's day was as a judgment against the fallen angels and against the giants that were created from the second incursion of the watchers against humanity. And that this is what is spoken about in the book of Enoch, and also from the book of the giants. Ava, Indiana, is asking me what I'm reading from. It's from Plato, that I was reading from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, Tablet 1, and also Plato, Critias, and Timaeus, where Solon goes down to Egypt and asks them to tell him about, the things that had occurred in the past. And the Egyptian priest, the oldest priest there, tells him about the time of Atlantis, and how even back then Atlantis was trying to subjugate the entire earth in a global government, or what we called a new world order. Now, in the second part of the show, when I pick this up, I'll go into greater detail as to what happened during the time of Atlantis and what led to the destruction, and how that led to the creation of modern humanity. Because as it states in the Sumerian text, and also in Genesis chapter 1, there's two different creations mentioned there, that the Archons, the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, they were trying to create a slave race. And that this race is cited as being the primitive worker, or the Lulu, and that it was in their efforts, their experimentation, and also their engagement in direct bestiality, that they were able to bring this particular being to a certain achievement as far as ability and mentality, but that they were in no way equal to what was the coming of the civilized man, as stated in the Sumerian text, or as the Adam that was given the breath of life, that became the host for the sons of God that we are, that we find ourselves in this form, and that it was this being that was created by the Most High and by Yahushua as the Word, or as many of you know him, Jesus Christ, that we were created in their image, and that our creation was also a judgment against the fallen angels, because it would be through our presence and existence on this, they would be judged for the evil that they rendered against us, and that also that we would be given chance for redemption and a return to our first estate, which I cover in great detail in my 6th book, Sons of God, Who We Are While We're Here, and that I also cover it in great detail in what will be my new book, Skyfall, Angels of Destiny, which should be out in 3 to 4 months. And so with that, I want to again apologize. I'm going to try to leave time to take your questions and to bring y'all on. I'm going to try to say at least the last segment of the show for you to, for your calls, so that I can answer you directly and allow you to share commentary or ask whatever questions you might want to ask about the things that I'm talking about, the things that I'm covering. But there's just no time today. So, and for that, I apologize. Please do join us Tuesday night. Don't forget, freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, Studio B, that at 8 p.m., the chat room will open, and you'll be able to access my new show, Momentary Zen, which will be every Tuesday night on Revolution Radio. And with that, I just appreciate all of you. I just pray that the Father and the Son lead and guide you in discernment and revelation, protect you and your loved ones, your family members, those that cross your path, and help us all to bring others to discernment and understanding on all the strange esoteric aspects of the gospel. God bless all. In Yahushua, Yahuwah's name I pray. Amen.